Madonna, oh, say, Shammai varenzen, Nei Madonna, oh, say, Shammai varenzen. I lift up my eyes unto the mountains, from where will my help come? My help comes from God, Maker of heaven and earth. To say that our hearts are broken today is an understatement. Hearts are broken, the tears are flowing, the emotions are filling this room because, as I have heard from so many of you, the world has lost an incredible soul. A soul that was overflowing with passion. A soul who taught and lifted up souls and made such a difference. A soul that, however, will continue to touch lives. Proof enough, all of the young students here today, as students, we're going to go on and pursue incredible things and teach their students one day and keep Michael Larsen's incredible legacy alive. But our hearts are broken. At the same time, however, I hope that in our short time together here, later at the cemetery, and following at the theater, you'll share so many incredible stories that you'll realize just how full your hearts are. Because he was a part of your life. It's an honor to stand right before the woman who brought him into this world, his mother, Phoebe. I know the love there was incredible. We remember your late husband, his dad, at this moment. And Aunt Sue is here, David, Uncle Jack, Cousin Rob. And as my friend Sherry was telling me over the past several days, the family is so huge because he chose. He chose all of you to be a part of his life. And I understand you even chose him at one point. Adopting him into your family, and then how excited he was to learn that this Jewish culture that he was included in was actually his own because of a simple DNA test. How amazing that is. We turn our thoughts to yesterday now, to a world that unfairly only lives in our memory. We know that the past is irretrievable, but we have the gift of memory, and with that gift, we can recapture treasured moments and special images. Each of you, in your own unique way, could tell stories explaining the happiness that you knew with Michael, a man with whom you were lucky enough to live with and learn from and sing with and dance with and laugh with and love. And so we praise the eternal wellspring of life who links yesterday to tomorrow, and we affirm that despite all of the tragedy that's bound up with living, it is still so understand that there can be no love without loss, no joy without sorrow. And so this afternoon we ask for courage. Courage to accept the all of life, the love and the loss, the joy and the sorrow, as we remember together. This room is filled with people with many different faith backgrounds. And the prayer that I say now is one that's familiar to many, no matter what that faith background. In Judaism, we refer to it as the 23rd Psalm. We say it in the Hebrew and then in the English. And if you know it, especially in the English, you know a version of it. As I say it, I hope that you'll feel comfortable to say it along with me. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai rovi lo echsa, Dinos deshe yarvitseni, Alei menuchot yenachani, Nafshi yeshovei, Nafshi yeshovei, Yanecheni lemahadrei tzedek leman shemo Gam ki eileh begates of Maves lo irara ki ata imari shivtecha Umishantecha, Shivtecha umishantecha, Emayinachamuni, Taroch lefanai shulchan, Taroch lefanai shulchan, Taroch lefanai shulchan, Neged zorelai, Dishanta v'shemen roshi, Dishanta v'shemen roshi, Dishanta v'shemen roshi, Kosir v'ya, Afto v'deset, Yirdefuni, Kol yemei chayai, V'shavti, b'beit Adonai, V'shavti, b'beit Adonai, Le'orech The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest the table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord. I consider myself very, very blessed to be the rabbi of one of Michael's childhood friends, who happens to be in Italy right now. And she sent me some words, Shari Wallach did, to share with you, and these are just some of the things that she wanted me to share with you today. Where do I begin to summarize a 42-year-old relationship? This was a man who had a profound effect on my childhood, my adolescence, and my life. I know by looking at Michael's exploding Facebook page that he had a similar effect on everyone in this room and those here in spirit who, as I am, are trying to wrap their heads around this tremendous and unfathomable loss. Michael loved his time at New Hyde Park Memorial High School when he found an amazing community with the theater kids. He said those were among the best years of his life. He had found a place where he truly belonged, and although I was 12 and he was 15 when we met, he recognized that I needed to feel that same belonging. So he played big brother to me and brought me into his inner circle. We became instant and constant companions. He dragged me to college with him, where I was exposed for the first time to very adult themes. That probably troubled my parents. And I loved every single crazy, inappropriate minute of it. To his mom, Phoebe, or as he would refer to you, the Phoebster, you raised the mensch. An incredibly generous, gifted, and amazing man. He loved you with all of his enormous heart. He bragged about your ridiculously high bowling score and your incredible agility. He was so proud to be Phoebe and Ruby's boy, and he knew how proud you were of him. I am brokenhearted at the loss of my big brother, but I'm glad that he spent his last week doing something he adored. He loved to travel. He went to Romania to perform with Avi, and while there, in true Michael fashion, he sent me daily photos of everything that he ate. When he got to London to spend time with a friend he had not seen in 11 years, he sent me 2 texts. The first was a photo, and the caption said, "Look, I'm eating real fish and chips." And the second was the following message. Shaz, that was his nickname for me. Shaz, I am so terribly happy right now. I'm so very grateful to have had you in my life. Thank you for always making me feel special, wanted, loved, and important. I know I speak on behalf of everyone in this room and those who are unable to be here today. You were loved more than you could imagine, respected more than you could have known, and will be missed for eternity. Rest in peace, big brother. I know there is a Steinway and an espresso machine keeping you company on that flat. It's an honor to call upon some special folks to share some thoughts with us, and please know that the expectation is that following the burial service, when you all gather at the Wick Theater, there'll be more time to share. No one is to be left out. We want to hear from everybody, and that'll be a great time to share. I want to introduce David Nagy, who is our keyboardist today, and I want to bring Julie on up to share some beautiful music.
I'm going to speak really quickly because I don't even know who I'm about to do this. Because I feel like Michael's standing there with a chair and he's going to throw it at me. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Julie Kleiner, but I am standing up here representing the whole Kleiner family. My sister who's here and my parents who really wish they could be. We met Michael when I was around 10 years old and he moved to Florida. And he directed my first professional production, which was Annie Warbucks at the Broward Center, and the Glitz and the Samuelsons, and produced it, and many of the people here today were in it, so I don't know family down here in CD, and we spent a lot of time together, and we had a lot of fun. Through hurricanes at my best friend's house, they came. We had hurricane martinis or something. Anyway, this is a song from my last show that I did with Michael down here at the Mosaic Theater, which was Make Me a Song, and no, I'm not singing Passover. And David Nagy was our music director, so we thought this was, we could try this. I'm doing my best. I'm trying.
Thanks, Amy, for putting us after Julie. Julie, you would have made Michael really proud, as you have for so many years. I remember actually Andy Warbucks. It was about the fourth or fifth show we had ever produced, and I don't remember which performance it was, but Julie had a really high fever. And I remember we were sitting in the audience and somebody said, Julie's got a really high fever. And I said to Michael, what are we gonna do? He says, don't worry about it, she'll be fine. And I said, Michael, she may not be. He said, don't worry about it, she'll be fine. And I remember Michael was just, you know, he brought the best out in everybody. He pushed us all beyond our boundaries. I want to first thank Amy London, who is probably one of the world's greatest stage managers, but more importantly, for those of you that know Amy, she's really probably one of the best life managers that I know, and she just always comes through for everybody when we need her, and thank you, Amy, for just doing what you do. I remember when Michael had his second heart attack, Kathy and I were in Atlanta, and my daughter, who was producing Menopause for us at the time in Seattle, she was with Michael and Daria, and she called us and she said, Michael just had a heart attack. And Kathy and I jumped on a plane, and we met Amy and Phoebe there that night, and I just remember what it was like when we saw his toe move, because the doctors gave him no hope. They said, there's not a chance, he's not gonna make it through the night. And I remember it was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, we saw his toe move, and we said, oh my God. And he pulled it together, he got it together, and made it another 12 years on a heart that probably shouldn't have been. And that was probably Michael's biggest asset, was his heart, because he gave so much of it to so many of us. I met Michael, Kathy and I met Michael at Stage Door Manor 30 years ago when my daughter Taryn was 8 years old. And I remember seeing this guy. He was the Pied Piper of the camp. I mean, it was like he just led everybody. Everybody wanted to be near Michael. Everybody wanted to know Michael. Everybody wanted to touch Michael. Everybody wanted to be taught by Michael. He was, you know, in all the years and all the entertainers I've gotten to know, and now living in Las Vegas, I've gotten to know so many people out there. And if people know all these entertainers from a distance, and they see them on TV, and they admire them. But I don't think anybody that I've ever met, of all the people I've ever met, have ever touched the lives individually the way Michael did of so many people around the world. I talked to so many people today before the service, and the stories that we all have to talk about. And I remember at Stage Door Manor that first year, I just wanted to get to Michael because I wanted him to get to know who my daughter was so she could get a good part of the show. And so Michael said to me, why don't you just start producing, then you can put your daughter in whatever she But anyway, I got to know Michael a little bit that summer, but then the next summer we got to know Michael much better, and we used to go to the diner after the shows, like at 11 o'clock at night, and just sit and talk till 1 or 2 in the morning. And I gotta tell you, I knew nothing about theater. I mean, it's hard to believe that I spent my last 30 years involved in the theater, because at that time I knew nothing. I remember Michael taught me every word and the lingo, and I remember the first time he said upstage and downstage and stage left and stage right. I had no idea what he was talking about. But Michael was like my Google. You know, today, whatever we need to know, it's true. Whatever we need to know today, we go to Google, you know. I used to call Michael for everything for the last 30 years. I was on a golf trip about 5 years ago, and something came up about a show on Broadway many years ago, and there was this big discussion going on amongst the guys. And I said, hold on, let me call my friend Michael. And I called Michael Larsen on the phone without even looking anywhere, without Googling it. Or he gave me the date the show happened, who starred in the show, all about the show. He just knew everything. When it came to musical theater, nobody knew more than Michael. So after a few years, we said to Michael, because he was looking for a change in his life, and we said, look, we're producing shows now. We're doing most of them regionally. We're doing a few things off Broadway and so on, but we'd love you to move to Florida. We really think we have work for you. And Michael moved down here, and I got to tell you, it was wonderful. It was wonderful having him nearby. And that's when he really started touching so many lives, in addition to what happened in New York and so many kids that he worked with and adults and people that he played for and so many shows that he was involved in. But he really got to know so many people. And Phoebe, you know, I've always been told there's nothing worse than losing a child, but you have to feel so proud to not only have had Michael Larsen, the Michael Larsen, as your son. And I really mean that. I've never known many people like Michael. He was a one of a kind, and the fact that he was your son, and you had him for all these years, and the blessing that he got to live together with you these last couple of years, where you could see him, and I know what a pain in the ass he could be. But you know what? He was so proud of you. There wasn't a time that I spoke to Michael that he didn't talk about you. I always asked him how you were doing, and he always told me exactly, and always told me how your bowling was, you know, and so proud, so proud. So really, what an honor to have been Michael Larsen's mother. I really I'm so happy. And I feel very blessed. We got to see Michael 2 weeks ago. Kathy and I had a little memorial for our director, our choreographer. This is unbelievable. We lost Michael and Daria, and they worked together for many years, both very young. And they met 30 years ago, ironically. They worked for us for many years. And we lost Daria a month ago, also of a heart attack. They're 62 years old. So we put together a little memorial at our house in Florida here, and Michael, obviously, and Phoebe came. And Michael spoke beautifully, and it was so great to see him. And then we talked for like an hour afterwards, and then he called me. And this was the blessing. He said, I left my iPad at your house, and I really need it. Is there any way you could meet me? And I said, of course, I'll meet you anywhere. So I met Michael that night, and we sat in a parking lot and talked for like an hour, just about everything. And that's why when I got the call the other day, what had happened, I said, this was God's way, I guess, of bringing us together one last time so we could share some thoughts and life's thoughts, and we just talked about everything. So I just want to say that over the years, the word genius has been used very loosely, and it's usually for people that have changed our lives. And when I talk about this right now, I just want you to know I'm talking for everybody, because we all have these same stories, and we all have stories where Michael touched us so deeply. So this is really for all of us. And these people that have changed our lives forever for the good were people like Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell, Albert Einstein, Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, and Bill Gates. And I know, and I speak for all of us when I say this, Michael Larsen to me is in that esteemed group. He really is. He touched our lives and he changed our lives for good. Stephen Schwartz wrote a song for the musical Wicked that was really meant for Michael Larsen. And the gift he gave us all, the song is called For Good. And it highlights and emphasizes exactly what Michael meant to so many, and what a force and inspiration he was to us all. He encouraged us, he pushed us all beyond our limits. He taught us, he encouraged us, he inspired, and above all, he gave us unconditional love with all his heart through his creative genius. He may have left us physically, but he will live on through all of us and the thousands of us around the world to be changed for the better. I just want to read these lyrics because I think this is so appropriate, some of them anyway, for Michael. I've heard it said that people come into our lives for a reason, bringing something we must learn, and we are led to those who help us most to grow, if we let them. And we help them in return. Well, I don't know if I believe that's true, but I know I'm who I am today because I knew you. Like a comet pulled from orbit as it passes the sun, like a stream that meets a boulder halfway through the wood. We can say if I've been changed for the better. Who can say I've been changed for the better? But because I knew you, I have been changed for good. It well may be that we will never meet again in this lifetime. So let me say before we part, so much of me is what I have learned from you. You'll be with me like a handprint on my heart. And I know whatever way our stories end, I know you have rewritten mine, being my friend. Like a ship blown from its mooring by a wind of the sea, off the sea, like a seed dropped by a skybird in a distant wood. Who can say if I've been changed for the better? Well, because I knew you. Because I knew you, I have been changed for good. I love you, Michael Larsen. And by the way, anytime we go by his stage, Michael started a little tradition at stage door many years ago. After Jack died, he knocked on wood, and all the kids put their hands up to the sky. So, Mike, this is for you.
I first just want to take a moment to look at this room, at your faces, because you here today are Michael Larsen. You are his story, you are his music, you are his song, and you will help his story go on until the end of time. I see people from all different walks of his life. He would be so happy to see you all here today. And thank you, Michael, for bringing us all together in your honor. It was so soon. But please help the legacy of Michael Larsen live on. Tell his stories. Tell them to your children and your children's children. They are worth telling. How still here. We will see him in the gleam in the eyes of his students. Hear him through the notes that his disciples sing, and remember him with love, as those who knew him tell those famous Michael stories. I, too, with Alan, met Michael at stage door when her daughter Karen was 10. There was a lot of talent on the stage, but I couldn't take my eyes off Michael. Who was this guy? There was magic in his hands. There was fervor in the way that he played. And I was fortunate enough to be one of the chosen parents who he bonded with. We all wanted to be in that elite group. We'd laugh into the wee hours of the morning at the diner. His smile warmed my heart. His soul touched my soul. It was there that our friendship blossomed and soon grew into a professional partnership. And he wasn't only Karen's mentor, he was a dear friend to me. But soon he became my mentor as well. I became a bit of his sidekick and his assistant director on many shows. He shared his brilliance with cast after cast. I watched, awestruck, and I learned. I learned so much from this man. The craziest part is he cared about what I had to say. He took it all in, he listened, and he would actually even ask for my notes. The past few days, as I have read tribute after tribute, I decided that Michael Larsen is one of the most influential people of our time. Someone said to me, "Too bad he never had children to leave a legacy to." I beg to differ. He's left a legacy with thousands upon thousands of children, students, actors, performers, and a lot of menopausal women. Whose lives have changed for the better because they knew him. He was passionate, filled with emotion. He was brave. He was adventurous, inspiring, and perfectly imperfect. And he was the perfect son, baby. He lived life to the fullest until his heart would beat no more. Oh, how I wish there had been one more miracle. Michael will live on in all the lives he touched and in all of our hearts. Some of us belong to the stars, and that is where he's going. So look up at that night sky. The stars will be shining a little more brightly. Farewell, my friend. Thanks for the love and the laughter, and for sharing the gift that is you. I hear America singing, and it's all because of you. I love you, Michael. Allison Chaplin would like to share a few words.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think of Michael, and I think of the word mensch. That's what comes to mind. I can't assume that everyone in this room knows what a mensch is, so I took the time to look it up. And the meaning? A mensch is someone to admire and emulate, someone of noble character. The key to being a real mensch is nothing less than character, rectitude, dignity, a sense of what is right, responsible, decorous, a person of integrity and honor. That basically sums it up, don't you think? I met Michael in the early 90s when he was working with his brother from another mother, Bruce Adler, lighting up stages all across Florida. As our relationship started as professionals, in no time at all, I was so proud to be able to call him a friend. Normally, friendship in this business is so complicated, but never with Michael. Michael was young in years, but had an old school soul. He was known as a good neshama, a good soul. like none other. He knew how to separate business from pleasure. Nothing was ever too much. He had a light that shone within and glittered. He was warm and loving and dedicated almost to a fault, and a son that loved his mother to the moon and back. He would come to a show and always ask Allie, "I need a seat for Phoebe, is that okay?" Like if I said it wasn't okay, would it still be okay? He loved his kids, and I do say his kids to pieces, teaching and helping and watching them grow. These last few days, I've seen Facebook light up like never before. I've seen older as well as current students post the most beautiful, heartwarming, honest feelings. Michael would have been beyond humbled. Beyond. This year, Michael had some ups and downs, and we shared many personal conversations, and I will treasure them always. I am grateful to Avi, as I know he spent the last week of his life with him. Michael loved every minute, the work, the travel, just being with you. It was what he loved doing. The last image photo Michael posted was him on a plane sitting back with this huge grin. I was going to say something else, but I didn't think it was appropriate. But his face was so peaceful. It was so peaceful. He looked elated and fulfilled, and almost as though he had come full circle. Michael, I am grateful to have a job that allowed me to meet and love such a delicious human being. Your personality and passion was both contagious and infectious, and I will miss you very, very much. Rest in peace, my dear friend. You'll always be in our hearts. Oh, at this time, before I leave, I just want to introduce somebody who I just mentioned. Very, very special man, and someone who has taken over the baton. Ladies and gentlemen, Avi Hoffman.
Oh. Okay, so first of all, I'm really disoriented because every show I ever did with Michael, he was there. Not there. I was going to wing it, but I was told that we don't nearly have the time for that. I was told to keep it short. Good luck. So I actually wrote some thoughts, and I am incredibly, incredibly lucky to have had Michael this last week of May and the rest of my life. I live for the smile in a kid's eyes when they step off stage after a great performance. Michael Larsen. What's in the name? Michael Larsen. A rose by any other name, I get it. I've seen Michael Larsen several times. He was always a joke. A rose by any other name. Michael Larsen. That's Larsen with an E. A name that has evoked a worldwide response of testimonials and gratitude unlike anything that I have ever seen or imagined possible. A man who touched thousands of lives with his encouragement, his guidance, and his support. A man who lived his life to the fullest without compromise. A man who is all heart. And who gave his entire heart and soul to everything and everyone that he touched. Who treated everyone like a star. And he knew, and he worked with, and he helped to create plenty of stars. A man who has been my friend, my dearest friend and confidant for over 30 years. Michael blessed my life professionally and personally, and just last week in Romania, we were making plans for our upcoming productions and world premieres. We had an entire season of shows lined up over a delicious plate of mamalige and carnațale. And for those of you who know the song Romania, Romania, you may recognize those words. He did love food. Even when he couldn't eat it. He sometimes asked to smell my steaming dishes as they came out. The waiters were not always amused. Quite the sight. How can I possibly summarize all these years of love and appreciation, trust? We bonded over a banana. Don't ask. It's not what you think. Obviously, you can. I wasn't his type, although we often propositioned each other. And we did love each other with a passion. When we stayed in the infamous hotel in Philadelphia, we laughed about contracting Legionnaire's disease. And we spent small fortunes all over the world on sushi. We played everywhere together. The stories that we shared. When my girls were little, Ariel played violin and Liana picked up the French horn. He would play duets with them, and he made them feel like they were the greatest musicians, which they are. Liana actually just started her second year at Manhattan School of Music, playing the French horn. And Michael went out of his way to go visit her when he was in New York 7 weeks ago, just so he could encourage and support her. When I started the New Vista Theater many years ago, I turned to Michael to be my first director. I couldn't possibly even begin to list all the shows that we did together and how he made them even greater than they were. Those of you who have worked with Michael know that every fiber of his being went into his work. His encyclopedic knowledge of musical theater was legendary. His commitment to his work was absolute, and if you were lucky enough to share the stage with him, you knew that he played with his entire body, all heart and soul. With just a glance, we understood everything that there was to understand. My one-man shows were not. They were actually two-handed. He breathed with me on stage. We harmonized and we shared our love of theater and our Yiddishkeit, our Jewishness. Being too Jewish would never be the same without him. Last week in Bucharest, we shared a delicious dinner with my mother and several members of the International Yiddish Theater community. And we offered to speak in English for Michael, because he didn't understand. He insisted that we speak in Yiddish, and he glowed with pride as he turned to me and he told me that he could understand every word he said. Michael Larsen. Nice Jewish boy. Loved his mother. Took such good care of her. And that responsibility now falls to us. Michael Larsen. A man whose legacy includes not only his work with the greatest performers of our time, but not only the hundreds, maybe thousands of productions he worked on as a director, musical director, dramaturg, and musician, but whose teaching, coaching, and mentoring of thousands of young theater students has given us some of the brightest stars on Broadway and in Hollywood, not only now, but also in the future. His musical theater scores and charts can and will be the basis for academic programs for generations to come. A man whose legacy will live forever. A man who continues to inspire. Someone I don't know on Facebook posted this to Michael. If life is measured not in the number of years on this earth, but in the profound impact on lives touched, then you lived for centuries. I would add to that, and you will live forever. I felt that I had to express myself musically in a song, and there are so many songs that I sing that I consider our songs. And then I remembered our production of Closer Than Ever at the Hollywood Playhouse. Both of our fathers have recently passed. And he tried to teach me a song called If I Sing. Needless to say, we broke down in tears for 3 days before we could even get through the song. And at his suggestion, I actually included it in our production at the Triad in New York. And every single performance, we just cried. He would have been happy to see such a great standing room only crowd. I make no promises, but I owe this to my beloved Michael Larsen. May he have a very bright and beautiful Garden of Eden, where he is now reunited with his father Reuben, with Theo McHill, with Brucey Adler, and his sweet, sweet Gracie. He has brought all of us together, and we are now, all of us, closer than ever. Michael's pride in his hand. Piano was his soul. I watched in wonder as he played show tunes, miles off from rock and roll. What he loved, he taught me. Now music's what I do. Often when I'm writing in my hands, he's there. If I sing, you are the music. If I fly, you're why I'm good. If my hands could find some magic, you're the one who said they could. If the child who's still inside me finds a song in empty air, when there is joy in making music, it is you who is there. Dad got old, his hands grew numb. Now he cannot play. I came to visit, he sat and asked me, how could it be this way? I couldn't find an answer. Sang the song for him instead. And Michael sat there smiling, for he knew what it said.
gargantuan. A little at a time, I guess, a verbal collage. I knew Michael for a very long time. We were colleagues, friends. He was the best man in my wedding, an uncle to my children, and a brother to me. Of course, he would always point out proudly that he was 13 days younger than me. We were somewhat convinced that we were long-lost fraternal twins. I knew both Michael and Brucey separately for years and years, but when I knew them together, my life exploded into a joyous, exciting wonderland. Michael was a confidant to both of us and a part of our family. We worked, traveled, played together. We celebrated occasions and holidays and opening nights and more. We traveled to Europe together, and I watched him communicate musically with Portuguese musicians. It was a sight to behold. Watching him perform at Bruce Savre was like watching magic unfold. The same is true for the work we did together with Avi. Magic, joy, love. We got each other jobs. We worked together. We were about to work together again. And every time I got him a job, he thanked me so sincerely. He called me sweetheart. We cried together, laughed, and played. We had 3-hour lunches. I would always set the day. We were meeting at noon. Somebody else has to pick up Jake. We were visiting Jimmy Ferraro in Denver, Bruce and I, when he suddenly said, I'm going to call Phoebe out. Let's get a dog. Phoebe said, are you kidding me? But then there was Gracie. I've never, ever, and I've loved my dogs passionately, I've never seen a man and a dog bond like that. He said, where should she sleep? I said, let's make a crate or a little bed. That's what they say to do. I said, just take her in bed with me tonight. And that was Michael and Gracie, and it was beautiful. When Bruce died, Michael was staunchly by my side. When my brother died, he was there waiting for me when I got home. When my mom died last month, he called immediately and told stories with me, despite the looming hurricane. It was the night before the hurricane we just had. He was my champion, my buddy, my dearest, my sweetheart, and my younger brother. When Michael got sick, the community held their collective breath, but he survived. When he had a second heart attack, as you've heard, I traveled with Phoebe to Seattle to be by his side. We were scared, but he survived the odds. The first thing that he said to me when he could talk was, Amy, we're in Seattle. Get me a real cup of coffee. Oh, I did. What is that you're carrying? It's for me. We became far closer throughout the following years. We talked about death and life and fear and joy. We talked a lot about pee. Did you pee today? They want to know if you peed today. How's the color? Remember? Unbelievable. Let me see how much. I mean, it was a relationship truly like no other. In my experience. He would call me, and he would say, I need you. And I'd say, where are you? And I'd go. Another hospital. My kids knew what that meant. I'd be gone for a while. Phoebe and I would have lunch in the cafeteria. It was very important to Michael that Phoebe and I had lunch in the cafeteria. So we would have lunch in the cafeteria. We'd be joined many times by Aunt Sue. We had chicken. Jimmy, we had the chicken. Right, David? And he would survive each time. And he'd tell us not to worry. Don't worry. I got it. He chose life always. He taught me so very much about that. He'd say, I can. Everyone would say, I'm sure you, I can. And when his students were nervous, he'd say, you can. Know it. And when I doubted my ability to speak today, I could hear Michael saying, you can. And you better. I promise to live. I don't like my world as much without Michael in it, but I know I can. Thank you, Michael, for all you brought to this world. Not only these people here, these many, many people who love you, but the many everywhere around the world. You brought the magic. And Alan, how interesting that I ended my written notes with, because I knew you, I'd have been changed for good. And now, and with David, Quinn, and Sharon. Oh, Uncle David, I'm so sorry, Uncle David.
Uncle David, thank
First
God.
with David. David. Oh,
A few more minutes to write something. Very soon. We're just listening to the song.
Hi, I'm Dave Wagner, Michael and Sue's husband. And I wanted to mention that Michael is a double special person. Michael grew up with adversity. He had poor health, and it was always a big problem for Michael. But he rose above it, and I find someone that rose above that type of adversity a very, very special person. Sue, his aunt, and I also had adversity in our life. I want to thank Michael very, very deeply from my heart. He spoke to Sue every week. The phone would ring. And Sue is a big People magazine bucket. She got People magazine every week, and she read it from cover to cover, and was really interested in the theater and all the celebrities. And Michael and Sue would speak for a half hour on the phone almost every week. And they would talk about the theater, and it brought joy and happiness to my wife. It's a very small little thing that Michael did, amongst all the big things he did, was talk to Sue once a week and brought joy and happiness to Sue. And I would like to thank him, and may he rest in peace. Thank you.
Now, David, Quinn, and Sharon. Not only are they dear, dear friends of Michael's, but also they'll tell you their other connections. Don't fall.
Well, hi, my name is David Quinn, perhaps for the last time, and for Phoebe, my name is also David Siegel. Being asked to introduce Karen and to speak today, even ever so briefly, I want to highlight what would happen if Michael was here. Because at some point, he would have turned to Julie and asked whether the rabbi had ever done musical theater. And maybe he could be convinced. And maybe it would be a draw. That's the voice. And the second thing, the rabbi's very talented. He's a good singer. Maybe he should do a show. Then he would only ask one more thing. So, are we eating? Are we gonna just, maybe we should just, we'll just. And then Arnie would say, I don't know. And then we would try to decide where we were eating. And we would, for reasons that have always been unknown to me, ask Arnie. Because that's like asking no one at all. Should we have Chinese, Arnie? I don't know. Maybe we should stop for a steak? All right. Do you think Phoebe would like Chinese food tonight? Okay. And this was our life together. A life with the three things you had to have if you were with Michael Larsen. A life of passion and love. A life of music. And then trying to figure out who was going to pick up the check. Thank God Nicholas is I met Michael Larsen at Stage Door Manor in 1978. It is it's interesting that the first lyrics he ever taught me were, "It's a world, 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 world mad." From the Mad Show. And through the years, we did so many shows and so many songs, I couldn't begin to remember any of them. But in my heart, I know every harmony, every word. Because if you didn't know every But there is a line through time. And it starts with people we have never met. It's interesting that we sing from Maltby and Shire today. Richard Maltby, his daughter, is a student of Michael's. Because they wrote a song from the musical Baby with Todd Graff. We have to throw all the references. And a young woman in that musical sings about how the story goes on. She says that when she thinks back over her life, she thinks back about who she is, that she is just an extension of the life before hers, and the life before hers. And as a teacher, I often ask my students to think back. Who was that first person whose life has been pulled through time to make you who you are? How many lives were touched in those moments of time to make you who you are? I know that my life has been altered. And the destiny of my son and my children and their lives have been altered because of my cross. As a proud father, I should mention, my son's working on a Broadway show. Because one day, Michael Larsen invited him into the rehearsal room to watch Eric Bergen work. And to say, you know, you should think maybe you could be a director. He was 9. But cast your mind back to that first person and to the joy of the moments we feel today. What is it that ties us together here, now? It is the life of Michael Larsen, but it is more than that. It is the love that he created that we feel. And there's a song that we always sing at Stage Door, written by Jacques Brel. The title is If We Only Have Love. You've got the lyrics in front of you. Before we join ourselves in song today, everyone take a moment, look for the lyrics. You have just a few moments. Kids, memorize all the words. I'm going to if you're wearing a ring on any finger that you can take a ring off of, you should take the ring off right now and put it down someplace. That's what Michael would have done. Take this ring off, put it there next to him, as he always did. And before we sing, I want you to think of something. Because I'll tell you today, maybe for the first time I've ever considered this, man, I've sung this song a number of times and I've still never learned the lyrics. Heat! Jacques Brel was wrong. If we only have love, no. Because today we we have love. Today we have each other. Today we have a family just like the one Michael is. A family he made by drawing us into him. People would often ask me how we were related. I would say, I was Michael's brother. And it was true. Because he made me become his brother. Because that's how much he loved me, and that's how much I loved him. If we only had love, no. We have love with each other today.
She'd like to invite the other stage door alumni to come stand with us for 3 minutes.
Yeah, because we don't perform in public and we
Should I win?
give us a B about
Should I win?
with, speaking right there, I just have to let David know that I am, or was, theater kid. I wasn't lucky enough to have Michael in my life, is maybe that I wouldn't be a rabbi.
But you've got chops.
But it's beautiful to be able to stand in a room with people who speak a language that I don't often get to speak. Our final prayer that we say in the sanctuary today is a prayer called El Malei Rachamim. It's a prayer that sends the soul to a special place. And I think if I read these lyrics instead of the traditional translation of El Malei Rachamim, you'll understand why I picked them for today. So many men seem destined to settle for something small. But I won't rest until I know I have it all. So don't ask me where I'm going. Just listen when I'm gone. And far away you'll hear me singing softly to the dawn. Rivers belong where they can ramble. Eagles belong where they can fly. I've got to be where my spirit can run free. Got to find my corner of the sky. El Malei Rachamim, for those of us in this room, we get is really a prayer. Sending this magnificent soul to a very special corner of the sky. If you are able to, we do rise for El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim Shochein Bamromi Amitzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShechina B'malot Yoshim Utorim Kezohar Harakia Maziri Et Nishmat Michael Shalach Lolamo Beganim Tye Menuchato Anabal Harachamim Hastirehu Beseter Kenafeka Leholami Utzror bitzror chaim et nishmato Adonai unachalato V'yanuach v'shalom al mishkavo V'nomar Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time we're going to prepare to leave for the cemetery. I'm going to ask that you turn and face the center aisle. Remain where you are until the family has exited, please. Folks, for those of you that are not able to go to the cemetery, you're more than welcome to go to the Wake Theater directly. Thank you very much.
I